Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy. You're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment. And our guest is Maura Thomas, speaker, trainer, author, and founder of RegainYourTime.com. Welcome to the show, Maura.
Thanks very much for having me. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to give everybody some background on Maura. She is an award-winning international expert helping busy people discover attention management as the new path to productivity, working with clients such as the American Heart Association, L'Oreal, Dell, and AIG. She is a TEDx speaker, founder of RegainYourTime.com, and author of Personal Productivity Secrets and upcoming book, Work Without Walls. Her work has been featured in hundreds of national media outlets, including Inc., Fast Company, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and the Wall Street Journal, to name a few. And she is a regular contributor to the Harvard Business Review. So I have a million questions for you because I think, like most of the world, I always feel like I don't have enough time to get everything done.
It's probably true.
Yes, it is true.
To get everything done.
I can say in Stacy's case, it's 100% true.
So
it's great, though. It means you're ambitious and driven, and you got a lot going on, and that's great.
Well, I was reading through your blog about your new book, etc. First, as far as offices go, so I have a bunch of real estate offices, and you have advice on how to intentionally create a workplace culture that nurtures creativity and improves productivity. How could I do that?
Yeah, so I teach individuals how to manage the details of their personal and professional lives, but what I found was that they went back to their office and they found it all but impossible to implement the best practices because the culture at their company was so chaotic and loud and driven by distraction that it was really difficult for them to implement what they learned. So my latest book is all about helping organizations create a culture where their employees can bring their best to their office every day. So one of the things that is true is that the only research that is not in dispute about open office floor plans is that they save real estate costs. That is true. They absolutely save real estate costs, and that's important, right? Companies need to keep costs down. But in terms of, whether it fosters innovation and creativity, the jury, I suppose technically the jury is still out, but the overwhelming amount of scientific and peer-reviewed research that I have read says that it's actually not a great environment. It doesn't mean if you have an open office floor plan in your offices, in your real estate offices, that you can't, that you're out of luck. You just need to also think about the fact that people need quiet time and an opportunity to focus in order to get quality work done, especially in the case of, detailed real estate contracts. It's really difficult to do something. Studies show that when we're splitting our attention, we're focusing on the real estate contract, and then a colleague calls us, and then we focus for a couple of more minutes, and then the phone rings, and then we focus for a couple more minutes, and then an email comes in that calls our attention. When we do it that way, it takes longer, and the quality is lower. So you're pretty much guaranteed to have mistakes, especially in high detailed work. So it's really important for busy offices to also have spaces where either quiet times when everybody agrees that the office is going to be quiet and people step outside to make a phone call, and people speak in hushed tones. Maybe you pump in some overhead sound, like some white noise or some nature sounds, perhaps, and also have some spaces, conference rooms or unused offices where people can go close a door and work uninterrupted.
This is so interesting
because
so in my office I have 400 real estate agents, and in my own office I share an office, so I don't have a private office. And I find I have a couple different thoughts. Number one, being with other people in my office, I feel like it forces me to be better. Number two, like I've done some what I consider productivity hacks for myself. I don't have like chairs where somebody can sit and hang out and just
Chit-chat.
shoot the breeze with me. And at one time I did, and I'm like, wow, people come up and just want to shoot the breeze, and I just don't have time. I got to stay on a schedule. So whether it's good or bad, I took those chairs out of my office. And then the other piece is I think desks are like so Fred Flintstones. Like I look at a desk and there's so much junk that you put in a desk and you never touch it again. And I think it's just not productive to even have assigned desks to people. So what are your thoughts, Maura?
Well, I hear what you're saying, that people can use a desk to surround themselves with clutter, and definitely clutter is distracting.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there are studies that show that there are a couple of good reasons to have assigned workspaces where people can feel like it's their own. Number one is that people like to have their own space, some privacy, some opportunity to, put some pictures and customize it a little bit. If they feel like they have some control over their workplace, then they tend to be happier. Nobody likes to feel like they have no control and that they're completely helpless.
Right.
And then another thing is that when you can set up a work environment with the things that you really need, right, like your charger for your devices, your pens, a pad of paper, just some things that you use regularly, then it takes less thought. Mm-hmm. If you have to sort of get set up every time you sit down to work, and then, you're working and you reach for a pen, but the pen isn't where you expect it because you're at a different desk today than you were yesterday, then you have to interrupt what you're doing. Wait, where's the pen again? Oh,
right.
I put it over there.
That sounds like me.
That can be really distracting as well. So personally, I think I agree. Maybe you don't have a ton of space and a bunch of drawers, and maybe you stay on people to keep it to keep on top of it and keep it from getting cluttered. But I do think having some spaces that they can call their own are more advantageous.
You talk a lot in your work about the difference between attention management versus time management. What are the differences between the two?
Yeah. Time management to me is such an outdated idea. Back in the day, before we had computers and before we had email and before we had the internet, pretty much your only distractions were the phone and other people, right? And so you could go into your office because everybody had one, and you could close the door because everybody had one of those too, and you could put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and you could sort of manage your time, right? You could decide, here are all the things I have to do, and here are the times that I'm going to do them. And aside from, the occasional knock on your door or the times when you needed a break, you could pretty much work from your schedule, right? That was time management. But today that plan is out the door because we don't have walls right around our office. We don't have a door that we can close. Even we have a bunch of different phones. We have the internet, and even if nobody else interrupts us, or even if emails don't come in or whatever, the internet has trained us to interrupt ourselves because that any thought that jumps into your head that you have that you used to be forced to put out of your mind. Like if you were sitting there working and all of a sudden you thought, I wonder what movies are playing this weekend. I'd love to see a movie, right? You would be like, well, I don't have the paper in front of me, and so I can't really think about that right now. And you would just push it aside and stay focused. But now you know that with a few clicks on your keyboard, you can find out exactly what movies are playing this weekend. Or any other thought that jumps into your head, right? You can indulge it, you can get an answer, and so it's super distracting. So not only do we have external distractions, but we have internal distractions. And so if you do that contract, for example, like I described, a couple of minutes at a time, switching your attention back and forth, it doesn't change the fact that the time will pass. Right? But if you didn't control your attention during the time that you scheduled to do that activity, then you will have a much different experience than the one that you intended. So how you manage your time, to me, is only relevant to the extent that you also devote your attention, which means attention management is much more important today than time management.
That's very interesting. So somebody like you who is like an expert on productivity, I'm curious as to how you handle social media and your mobile device. Like, is it certain times in the day that you check them, or what is your How do you manage it?
Yeah, such a great question because everybody is really struggling with this. I think the most important thing to remember is that our devices exist for us, for our convenience. I think that we've forgotten that, right? I don't think anybody intentionally walked into like the Apple Store or Best Buy or wherever you got your device and, plopped down your money and said, here's my $200 so everybody in the world can interrupt me all the time.
Right.
And yet, that's how we behave, right? We don't ever put our phone, most people never put their phone on silent. It's always vibrate, which isn't really silent, and it still interrupts us. We never use the do not disturb features. We never shut it off. We just allow it to interrupt us all the time. And so I think taking control over your technology is the first secret. You have to remember that it's there for your convenience, and sometimes you have to be unavailable. And, I get this question from real estate agents all the time because they're like, hey, I have to provide really excellent customer service, which means immediate responses, because if I don't get back to people, they're just going to go to the next person. And to be honest, there are two things I have to say to that. Number one is I'm not really sure that it's true because everybody does research today, right? Nobody just sort of blindly plucks a person out of, off of Google and said, hey, her picture looks nice. I think I'll call her, right? Everybody does research. They ask their friends. They go on Yelp. They do research and to find the person that they think they want to work with. And so at some point, even real estate agents, even people in very competitive industries have to rely on their reputation, their personal reputation. And so if somebody is calling you, you have to recognize that they're probably calling you because it's you, because they did some research and they decided to call you. And if that's true, then they will wait. I mean, they won't wait days, but they'll probably wait an hour, right, for you to call them back. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if your customer were sitting right across the desk from you, not in your office because you took your chairs away, but if a customer were sitting right across from you, you wouldn't be checking your email and answering your phone because that's rude. And so if that's true, doesn't the work that you do for your customers when they are not in your presence, doesn't that work deserve the same amount of your respect and your attention? And if it does, then you have to be unavailable sometimes. And again, you can't be unavailable for days at a time, but maybe 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes at a time.
I love that.
It's reasonable.
I forgot that there's a silent mode on the phone.
You never put yours down long enough to see if that works.
That's what I tell people. Every device you have has an off button. You might not know where it is, but it's there somewhere.
I'm just as bad, though. I mean, I'm terrified of turning my phone off because I'm convinced that that'll be the time when somebody really needs to get a hold of me.
Yeah, but if they do, they'll find you. There's 17 other ways to get a hold of you. Right?
That's true.
There's an office line. There's a coworker. There's an email. There's instant message. There's social. There's all kinds of other ways for somebody to get a hold of you. And again, it's not like you're going to do this for hours and hours on end. But 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, maybe an hour. My real estate clients often ask me, how do I get my clients to stop calling me at 9 o'clock at night? And my response is, stop answering the phone.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Yes.
People do what works. So you have to train people how to interact with you in a way that works for you.
Good advice. Very good advice.
That's awesome. So we only have a few more minutes. Do you have any productivity hacks for just an average business person going to work or just dealing with life? Anything that just makes life easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. Number one is absolutely learning how to control your attention because our devices, marketers, everybody in the world is trying to get your attention right now. And so your only defense against that, and therefore your only ability to live a life of choice, because if you spend your days just reacting to everybody who wants your attention, then you're not doing your stuff, you're doing their stuff, right? And so the only way to live a life of choice is to learn how to control your attention. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that you can't, it's really difficult to manage all of the details that it takes to run your life successfully in your head or without any kind of system. Most people I find have their tasks that they need to do, like all of their responsibilities, really, all the actions that they need to take. They have them in some combination of their head, their paper list, maybe an electronic list, sticky notes, flags in their email, saved voicemail messages that they need to get back to. That's really hard to do effectively. It would be like trying to do a puzzle with the pieces scattered all over the house. That doesn't make any sense because you don't know how big the puzzle is.
Right.
You'd have to run around looking for all the pieces. You'd have to try to remember, like, what did that opening look like in the dining room? Then I have to now go into the bedroom and find that piece that fits that opening. What did that open? Right? You can't. It's not an effective way to do a puzzle, and it's the same with your life. You have to get everything in one. You have to have a really good system for managing all of those details, and that system starts with having a tool that you can rely on that will remind you of things when you need them, that you know you can access whenever you need it, and have everything in one place inside that tool.
Wow.
Great advice.
And I think the best place for any of our listeners listening today to find all of that information is to check out Maura Thomas's book and website. Her website is regainyourtime.com, and she is author of Personal Productivity Secrets and the soon-to-be-released book, Work Without Walls. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maura.
Thanks, Maura.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's all for this edition of Get Real. Tune in again next weekend for more.